Hey, what's up? In this video, we are going to go ahead and set up navigation for our React Native app. Now, to get started, we are going to need to be using React Navigation, which is basically a library or a dependency that gives us a way to add the navigation to our app. So this is like the most popular way to add navigation to your React Native apps, and that's what we're going to be using today. Okay, so if we come to the Get Started guide, you will notice that we have some prerequisites we need. So basically they are saying we need to know about React, which I'm guessing we do. Now they say we need to know about context, but don't worry so much about this. Everything they say you want to know here, we are going to be covering them. Okay, so to get started, I'm using yarn, but if you have npm, do npm install. I'm going to be doing yarn add. So I'm going to copy this, then over here, I'm going to open up a new terminal. Then I'm going to be installing everything that they say we need. So let's install that. Then we're going to need to install some other things. Now, if you're using Expo, you're going to be doing that. But for us, we are using the CLI. So we're going to be also installing the necessary dependencies for using the CLI. Okay, so let's also install this React Native screens, safe area context. So these are used by React Native Navigation to give you the navigation basically. So don't worry so much about those, although you might use some of these for other things, but we'll get there when we need to. Okay, so after we install, you will notice that we need to do npx pod install, and this is going to be setting up the native navigation on iOS. So it's going to install all the necessary native dependencies. Okay, so now that it's done, let's do the npx pod install. Pod install for the iOS. And by the way, instead of us, actually it should be pod-install. So as we develop, we are going to be installing many dependencies that are going to need to be installed this way. So what I want to do is set up a script that we can just do something like yarn pod, and it's going to run this. So for now, let's run it. But I'm going to go to the package.json file. So right here, I'm going to come here and also add another one. This is going to be pod. So in here, now we can make sure it runs our command, so that we can just do yarn pod and it's basically installs. Okay, so moving on, now that we've installed all this, the first thing we're going to do is to initialize the gesture handler. So we're going to go to our app entry file, which is in the app.js right now, and then we're going to import this. So they say import it on top of the file, so make sure it's imported here. Okay, so once you have it, we need to wrap our app in a navigation container. So if you come back to the docs, you notice that we can import navigation container from React Native. So I'm going to bring up this import here. So I'm going to bring it here, navigation container. Then everything has to be wrapped in here. So we can now return a navigation container. Then I'm going to be removing the types here. So I'm going to be, let me remove this type, because we're not using this typing. And maybe in the future I can create some tutorials about TypeScript, which is a better way to type your applications, in my opinion. Okay, so that's failing. I'm going to need to rebuild this in Android Studio. So I'm going to open up Android Studio again. Then I'm going to stop the app. Then now I can rerun it. Okay, so let's wait for it to build. Anyways, still building here. Now that it's done, you'll notice that now our application is back and it's running. So to now continue, I'm going to be removing these styles here, and that's because I'm going to be showing you another way of structuring your styles so they can look more cleaner. So now that our app is back and running, let me also remove this, the new screen stuff, we don't need it. Then I'm going to set up my navigation elsewhere. Okay, so I'm going to go here in our navigations folder, and I'm going to create a new folder. Actually, I'm going to create a new file here called index.js. And this is what's going to be exporting our default container. So I'm going to now come over here and copy all this. So when I copy it out, then we can come here and I'm going to create a function. This should be a component. So the navigation container should be a component that wraps over everything else. So I'm going to call it, let's say, const app container, app nav container. Then this is gonna be function. Okay, then we're gonna return basically the JSX. Okay, so let's import our navigation container. Let's import that, and let's import the status bar stuff. Actually, at this point we don't need this, so let's just import the container. And now, for now, let's import the text because we are going to need it. Okay, so now then let's export this because we are going to be adding more other configurations here. So that's why that's why I moved it from the main app.js file. So once we have this now, instead here in app.js, instead of using this, we can now replace this with app container like this. Okay, so if you have other things we need to set up, we're going to set them up here. Let's configure the import, make sure it's importing properly. Can't find React. So since this is returning JSX, we need to make sure we have React imported in this file. So import from React. We don't need components. So let's do that. I see that the app is back and running. So now, in here, remember our app is going to be divided into almost 3 types of screens. So there will be some screens that will be in the home screen, and then these screens are going to have a drawer. Okay, then we also have some screens that the user is only going to access whenever they are authenticated, and whenever they are not authenticated, and when they're authenticated they will never have to see these screens again. Okay, so we're going to now structure our screens or configure them to follow this kind of thing. So we are going to create something called a navigator. Now the most popular one, or the one you're going to be using here, is called a stack navigator, and the way that works is it's going to be adding screens on top of each other, going back to them every time the user requests a screen. So if a user requests a screen, let's say to go to the details of maybe a contact, the screen before, which would be maybe the contact list, will be popped out, and then the new screen will be shown in front. So this makes it really good, so that when a user clicks back, we can just remove the screen and then we can go back to the previous screen, which makes the transition awesome and very fast. Okay, so here we are going to separate this into folders. So this is going to be called home. Now I'm going to be using navigator here as the convention for the naming. That's because each of these files is going to be containing a set of screens that will be wrapped in a navigator. Okay, so this is going to be .js. Now in here, we need to return a component that defines a set of instructions on how this navigator will work. So if we come over here, what we need to do is create a stack navigator. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is each of these navigators is gonna need to be installed separately. So if you need like a tab, you're going to install /tab differently. If you need a stack, you're going to install /stack differently. So let's install the stack. We also are going to need the Drawer Navigator. So I'm going to also search for Drawer. Okay, so when it comes up, you'll notice that we need to install the Drawer Navigator too. So I'm going to go to the yarn section, and then I'm going to copy this, and then we can install the drawer too. Okay, so that's all we're going to need to work with for now. Now, here we have a basic example on what we need to create a drawer-based navigation. So for the screens that we will need to put in a drawer, we're going to be doing something like this. But before we get there, let's first set up the home stack. Okay, so here I'm going to, actually let me just bring in these imports because I don't need to import things like React every time. Just remove this. You can call it home navigator. Now in here, remember we need to return a navigator component. So here we have a method called stack navigator that we can call to create a stack navigator. So I'm going to be calling it home stack. This is going to be equal to create stack navigator. Make sure it's imported. Let's make sure it's imported. So I'm going to come over here and import it. Now that we've created our stack navigator, instead of us returning the container, we're going to return a navigator. Let me remove this text here because we don't need it. So to do that, you want to return basically when you say create stack navigator, it's going to give you an object you can use to define your navigator. So you're going to wrap it in stack.navigator, and then in here you define your screens. Now to define a screen, you call, right now in our case we're going to be calling home stack, then we call screen like this, and in here what we want to do now is define some options. So these options will be like the configuration that this screen should have when the user basically sees it. Now we're going to give it a name. This name is going to be used to navigate here. The name should be unique for every screen so that you can navigate when you say app navigate, it can know where to navigate to. Now when you define a screen, the most mandatory things you need are the name and then the component that screen will be using. So I'm going to create a simple component here, and then of course you're going to refactor this out. So this is going to be contacts. It's going to be a simple component like this. It's going to be returning view. So the view is basically the main component for building view components or for building UI components in React Native. So everything you do will have to be wrapped in a view. Now here let's say hi from contacts. Okay, so also I'm gonna create some other ones here because they're gonna be very similar. Then this is gonna be the detail one. Then we're gonna have the create one, create contact one. Just rename here. It's gonna be the detail, contact detail. Then we are gonna have the settings one. So also let me duplicate it, then settings. Then just have settings here. So this is our stack navigator, where the one that the user will be accessing when they are logged in. So now we can basically change this to be, this will be contacts. Okay, then I'm going to duplicate this, then I'm going to change this to detail, then this should be contact detail. And mind your names, because these names are used by default as the screen titles, so make sure it's meaningful here. Okay, so this one is going to be create contact, then this can be create contact, then the last one is going to be the settings. Okay, then here we can have settings. All right, okay, so looking good. So for now this is fine. Now we are going to need to create the same thing for the screens that the user will access when they are not logged in. So I'm going to now copy everything here. Actually, let me first import view because it's not imported. It's imported. Even text. So the text, we use it basically to show text on the screen. If you have some paragraphs, some headings, you can use text and then you can style it to look the way you want. So I'm gonna copy this and duplicate it here. So this, the next one, we can call it Auth Navigator. So inside the Auth Navigator, then we will have the login and the sign up. So let me change this one to login. Then this is gonna be the sign up. Okay, so let's remove these other ones. We don't need many for now. Let's rename this to Auth Navigator. Okay, so let's change this from home stack to Auth, but this name doesn't really matter, just to make sure it's different. Oh, what did we do? Okay, so Auth like that. Then here we need only 2 screens because those are the ones we have, at least at the moment. So I'm going to remove these other ones. So this, you can call it login. Then this, we can call it register. It's going to be going to the sign up component. Sign up like that. So let's save. Now that we save, we have basically our navigator set up. But now, the one that we are going to be using for the home, will have a Drawer Navigator. Now we need to set up a Drawer Navigator and nest it inside our stack navigator for the home, or this one, so that it is the one that is containing these screens. So over here, I'm going to basically create a new file called Drawer Navigator. So I'm going to rename our existing file. Remove this copy thing. Let's call it Drawer Navigator. So inside our Drawer Navigator, we need to create a drawer here and also call create Drawer Navigator. So let's first rename this to Drawer Navigator. So Drawer Navigator. So Drawer Navigator. So this can say maybe something like drawer. Then here we want to call create Drawer Navigator, the one that we get the one that we get when we have installed our navigator base, our Drawer Navigator, this one. So it's called Drawer Navigator. Make sure it's imported properly. Now up here, it's actually not. Let's import it properly. Create Drawer Navigator. Create Drawer Navigator. This should be from Drawer. Alright. So now that we have this, we also need to create a screen. Now the screen, let's create a screen here. So the screen is basically going to be the home screen. So for the component, it's going to be using the navigator. So with React Navigation, you can actually use a navigator as a component in a screen. Okay, so you notice that our home navigator basically returns a component, this, which is the navigator. Now in here, we need to specify something called an initial route name. So initial route name basically will be the screen that's shown first. So that's going to be the name, this contact here. Now here in the Drawer Navigator, when we make it return a navigator, since the navigator is also a component, it's going to come in here and then it's going to return by default the name of the screen, that is the initial route. The screen whose the initial route name we specified here. So right here, now we can say return for us the home navigator. So that's going to be home navigator. Let's import it. We need to change it because it looks like it's named wrongly. So now that I've renamed it, everything should be fine. So back to the Drawer Navigator, we only need one thing. So now that we have our Drawer Navigator there, let's go ahead and clean it up a bit. We don't need these screens. Okay, we don't need text and view. Thank you. If we go back to our basically index.js, where we're returning a navigator container, inside here we can return our routes. So inside here, let's say we want to return the screens in the Auth Navigator. We can come over here and do something like Auth Navigator, like that. Remember, Auth Navigator returns a component. So that means that the initial route name component will be put here. So now you can see we have that. So if we return something like Home Navigator, so here let me do Home Navigator, like that. Let's me comment this one out and then save. You notice that we get the initial route name for the other ones. Okay, so if you wanted to return the Drawer Navigator, the one we just created, you can come here and do return drawer. Okay, when I save it, you'll see that it returns this component here. But notice when I do this, you will see that it basically has a drawer, and then it initializes the screens that we set up here as basically the component to render in the drawer. Okay, so now this is all looking good. But now what we want to do is make sure that we return either of these screens here, because we don't really want to return all of those. So you notice that we have the Home Navigator, we have the Auth Navigator, and we can't really use them at the same time. So what we're going to do is whenever a user is logged in, so I'm going to have a constant here, is logged in here, logged in equals false. So whenever the user is logged in is false, then we are going to be showing the Auth Navigator. So I'm gonna be doing a ternary here. So whenever a user is logged in, then we show the Home Navigator. So whenever a user is logged in, return home. Then whenever they are not, return auth. So whenever they are not, return auth. Now you notice that the Drawer Navigator actually contains everything in the Home Navigator. So the best thing would be to just return the Drawer Navigator because it already contains the screens in the Home Navigator. So now we can remove this. And when we save, you see that now it returns login because we are not logged in. If we turn this to true, then it returns the screens that the user should access when they are logged in. So that's all and good. Thanks guys for watching. In the next video, we are going to come in here, refactor this one a bit. Actually, I guess we can do it now. So first thing that I always want to do is make sure that my route names are separated from my basically configs. So in the constants, you can come over here and create a file called route names.js. So route names.js. So here we can basically have our routes. So export default, no, export const. So it's gonna be contact list. So the name for this is gonna be contacts. Okay, so let's duplicate it a bit. So the reason for this is because, like I mentioned, this is used by default as a screen title. So whenever you have a lot of navigate to this screen at the screen title, and it is the one we use to navigate to any other screen. So if you're if you're navigating to a screen from different sections of the app and you maybe you want to change the name, it's going to be very hectic for you to change it in every other section. So what you want to do is make sure it's one, you have a one declaration where you're routing to this, so that when you change this, everywhere you are using this value, it changes accordingly. So let's do contact detail. So the other thing here will be the settings. Then this can be settings. Then this will be the basically the login. Then we can have register. All right. So now that we have this one set up, we can come over here and refactor our names. So instead of us doing it like this, we can now say okay, login, which is the whole point. Then here we can do register like that. Let's import the login one like that. Let's do the same thing on this other side. Also, we can name this one. So I'm gonna take this one out to home navigator. Let's declare it export const home navigator. Sorry, I'm gonna have to clear that one up because home let me remove this stuff. Home navigator equals home like that. Make sure it's good. So in here now we can import it properly. Also here we need to rename this, so this should be contact list. It should be the same thing here. Okay, this should be the detail. It should be create. I'm not sure if you have create. I guess we do. I don't think we do. Let's see, let's check it. Where are our route names? Create, we don't have it. Let's create it quickly. Bring it here. So export const create contact equals create contact. Okay, so here where are we? Home. Come on, let's import it. Also the settings. Okay, so now that that's done, we need to put these screens away from here. We don't want them to be in this file, but that we're going to be, actually I think we can do it now. So let's go ahead and put these where they belong. Now I'm going to go to the screens section. So in screens, let's create a screen for contacts. So here we can have a new folder. Actually, I'm going to put in a file, then contacts index.js here. Because if you think of it, we are going to be having a lot of things to do here, not just returning this one view. So I'm going to cut it out, then bring it here like that. Then let's export it. So export default contacts like that. So make sure you're importing these other stuff. So it's gonna be text view. Then we need React. Okay, it's gonna be tedious. We already know what we are doing here because we are going to be need to do it for the other screens. So now in here we can come and basically change it where we are importing this screen from. So here we can do contacts and we import it from screens. Okay, so that should work very similarly. Also, let me use this helper to format this one properly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do it for the other ones, and then I'm going to come back. Okay, so I've gone ahead to create all the other screens. All of them has an index.js file that basically returns a view like this, which is the same thing we have in our navigators, but now we can quickly refactor them out. So I'm going to remove these here so we can import them from the other side. Also remove this. Now here it's going to be contact detail. I'm hoping that the name is correct. Okay, let's import it. Then we need to create contact. Like that. Then the settings too. Like that. So now that we have this, we need to do the same thing in the other navigators. Let's remove this, don't need it here. It's just a config. Then here, let's do the same thing. Remove these ones here. Get that. So the name is going to be login. So let's import the screen. Also, we need to rename something here, I believe. Not really. So this is going to be register. If I change the name. Okay. So let's also format it. Remove these here. And yeah, I guess. So now the navigation is set up. So now we can navigate to any other screen. So in the next one, I'm going to come in, we set up context API so that we can really authenticate a user and also make sure that we can, instead of us hard coding the login state here, we can be pulling it from our global state. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.